Chapter 20. The Beauty in the Library. Belle wasn't the sort of girl who got bored easily, but she found herself tired of being trapped within doors. It was too cold to go outside, so she sat idly in the small study next to the fire, wondering when she would see the beast. She had grown less cross with him since he had saved her from the wolves, but she couldn't forget why she had run out into the forest and into danger. His terrible temper. She played the scene in her head over and over. The wolves, the woods, the beasts, the blood. She had almost died that night because of his rage. And why? Because she touched his precious rose? Though her anger and fear hadn't stopped her mending his wounds, had it? She supposed it was the least she could do after he'd saved her life. Oh, stop this, she thought. She spent far too much time thinking. That was all she did. Think. Analyze. Broad. She wondered how the woman from the stories she loved to read could bear it, sitting around all day so idle, just waiting to hear the day's news from men. But that was exactly what she was doing now, wasn't it? Waiting for the beast. There was nothing for her to do in the castle, and she thought she would go mad from the banality. At least at home with Father she had her books, and she could help with his inventions. He needed her. She needed him. She missed him, and she even missed the people from the village. It was true. Everyone in the village thought she was queer for reading so much, and she didn't exactly behave like other girls. So what if she was more interested in reading about princesses than being one herself? She felt thankful her father always gave her the freedom to express herself how she wished and lived her life the way she thought was right. He allowed her to be herself. Not many young women had that freedom, and she was starting to understand what a rare and beautiful life she had been living until recently. Here she was stifled and alone. The beast watched her as she sat in the little red chair next to the fireplace. She didn't know he was standing there. Her face was squished up in disapproval, like she was reproaching herself inwardly. She was probably scolding herself for mending his wounds, but she couldn't know the truth. How could she? She didn't know he just as easily could have killed her had the wolves not been there to distract him. Imagine it. Imagine if he had killed her. How horrible, how utterly ghastly that could do such a thing. Another terrible deed added to the long list, a list no doubt being tallied by those witches. He was sure it would have been the final act of evil that would have pushed his dark heart into further decay, and the witches would be here now to mock him. He would have lost himself completely, if he hadn't already. Surely there was something left of himself. He wasn't entirely a beast now, was he? If he was, wouldn't he have killed her? He wouldn't have cared about breaking the curse. As it was, he needed her desperately. She was his last chance. He wasn't sure if he deserved this chance, but he saw Belle's arrival at the castle as a sign he should try. How could he possibly make himself love her, truly fall in love with someone like her? She was nothing like the girls he'd fancied. She was beautiful, yes, but not in ways he usually admired. It would never work, and even if he did fall in love with her, how could she ever fall in love with him? It was hopeless. He was loathsome. He saw that now for the first time. He saw how vile he'd become, and he felt he deserved Circe's punishment. Perhaps this right here was his punishment, never knowing what it was to love. Belle looked up at him and smiled. He hadn't expected that. Belle, will you come with me? She raised one eyebrow and gave him a sly smile like she didn't trust him. Okay. They walked past the vestibule and into a long passageway he hadn't yet seen. It was sparse, except for a small red velvet bench and a lonely gargoyle statue, and at the end of the passage was a large arched doorway. When they reached the door, the beast said, Belle, there's something I want to show you. He started to open the door, but stopped himself. He was surprised by his nervousness. But first, you have to close your eyes. She gave him that look again, like she didn't trust him. Honestly, how could she? He thought, but she did seem intrigued and slightly more comfortable in his company, which gave him hope. It's a surprise, he said. and she closed her eyes. She could feel the passing of his hand in front of her face to be sure she wasn't peeking. Both of them were so untrusting of each other. He took her by the hands and led her into what seemed like a vast open space. She could tell by the sound her footsteps were making. "Can I open them?" her voice echoed. If she hadn't known better, she would have thought perhaps they were in a cathedral. "No, no, wait here." He released her hands. She heard a swish and then felt warm sunlight on her face. "Now can I open them?" He was actually enjoying this, giving her this gift, and he found himself smiling for the first time in ages. "All right, now," he said, and she opened her eyes, which widened at the remarkable sight. "I can't believe it! I've never seen so many books in my entire life." The beast hadn't expected to feel this way. He hadn't expected what it would mean to him to make someone so happy. You like it?" he asked, and she did, more than she could express. "It's wonderful," she said, happier than he'd ever seen her before. "Then it's yours." And he felt something completely unexpected. What had started out as a way to bring them closer together for the sake of breaking the curse turned into something else, something he didn't understand. He loved making her happy. "Oh, thank you so much." Books. Books make her happy. She wasn't like any girl he'd ever known before, and he thought perhaps he liked it. In fact, he was sure he did.